A shocking discovery reveals Stonehenge's central stone may have traveled farther than any ancient monument ever recorded. A new scientific study has reignited debate over Stonehenge's altar stone, its origins, and how ancient people moved it there. Before arguing about how it moved, you have to understand what the altar stone actually is. It's a 6-ton block of red sandstone, long, rectangular, and visually different from almost everything standing around it at Stonehenge. Unlike the towering Sarsen stones that form the outer circle, or the smaller blue stones brought from Wales, the altar stone lies flat near the monument's center, positioned along the solstice axis, where sunlight once played a dramatic role during rituals. Today, the stone looks almost forgotten. It's broken, weathered, and partially buried, pinned down by two massive stones believed to have collapsed on top of it centuries ago. Most visitors walk past without realizing they're standing over one of Stonehenge's biggest mysteries. Archaeologists believe the altar stone was placed during Stonehenge's second major construction phase, somewhere between 2620 and 2480 BC. That timing alone sets it apart. It doesn't match the local Sarsens, and it doesn't behave like the Welsh bluestones either. From the beginning, it never quite fit the pattern. That's why researchers long called it the odd one out. Same monument, completely different story. And that quiet mismatch is what kept experts arguing, guessing, and circling back to this stone for decades. And this is where the old story used to feel comfortably settled. For years, Stonehenge seemed mostly figured out. The massive Sarsen stones, those were traced to the Marlborough Downs, just a short distance away. Local giants pulled from familiar ground. The smaller bluestones, those had a clear origin too, hauled from southwest Wales, about 140 miles away. Already impressive, but believable. Naturally, the altar stone got lumped into that same Welsh category. It looks similar. It felt like it belonged there. And once an idea settles into textbooks and museum plaques, it tends to stick. That assumption held for decades, not because it was proven, but because nothing strongly contradicted it. Then came 2023. New research took a hard look at the altar stone's chemistry and quietly dismantled the Welsh theory. The numbers didn't line up. The minerals didn't match. Suddenly, the last odd stone at Stonehenge wasn't Welsh at all, and the real mystery was just getting started. And here's where everything truly flipped. Enter Anthony Clark, a PhD researcher at Curtin University, armed not with legends or guesses, but with microscopes and atomic clocks hidden inside stone. Clark and his team weren't looking at the altar stone as a monument. They treated it like forensic evidence. Tiny fragments of the stone were broken down into individual mineral grains: zircon, apatite, and rutile. These minerals are stubborn. They survive heat, pressure, and time. More importantly, they trap trace amounts of uranium when they form, and uranium decays at a known rate. That decay turns each grain into a natural stopwatch. Here's the simple version. By measuring how much uranium had turned into lead, the team could calculate when those minerals formed. Different landscapes produce rocks with different age combinations. Stack those ages together, and you get what scientists call a geological fingerprint. The altar stone's fingerprint was wild. Zircon grains pointed to sources from the Mesoproterozoic era up to 1.6 billion years old. Others trace back even deeper, into the Archean eon, billions of years in the past. Meanwhile, apatite and rutile told a different chapter, landing in the Ordovician period around 470 million years ago. When that full fingerprint was compared against sandstone deposits across Britain and northern Europe, one region stood out sharply: the Orcadian Basin of northeast Scotland. Statistically distinct, nearly impossible to confuse. The match came in at roughly 95% certainty. Even Clark didn't believe it at first. The data kept pointing north, far north, and every rerun of the analysis said the same thing. This stone didn't wander from Wales. It came from Scotland. And suddenly, Stonehenge had a journey no one was ready to explain. And this is where the scale of the problem really sinks in. The Orcadian Basin isn't some vague northern region. It stretches across northeast Scotland, taking in areas around Inverness, the Orkney Islands, and even Shetland. That's not just far, that's the very top of Britain. From there to Stonehenge, you're looking at more than 450 miles by land. Hug the coastline by sea, and the distance jumps past 600 miles. For Neolithic Britain, that's unheard of. Nothing else at Stonehenge comes close. Even the famous Welsh bluestones, long considered the ultimate feat of ancient transport, traveled less than a third of that distance. This instantly breaks the mental scale archaeologists were used to working with. Stonehenge was already impressive. This turns it into something else entirely. And it raises the two questions everyone keeps circling back to. How did a 6-ton block make that journey? And why was it worth the effort? No tools of metal, no wheels, no written plans, just people, landscape, and determination. That's why this discovery isn't just about geology. It forces a complete rethink of what Neolithic Britain was capable of and what mattered enough to move a stone this far. Now comes the explanation many researchers believe fits best, and it's the boldest one. The idea that Neolithic people deliberately moved the altar stone step by step from Scotland to southern England. Straight away, the obstacles stack up. This was a world without the wheel. Britain at the time was thick with forests, sliced by rivers, riddled with bogs, and broken up by hills and mountains. Dragging a 6-ton stone across that terrain sounds almost impossible. Even today, the drive alone is exhausting. But supporters of the theory argue this wasn't a reckless journey. It was planned, carefully. The most likely route wasn't overland the whole way. It was by water. Rivers, coastlines, and short portages could have carried the stone south in stages. And there's real evidence that Neolithic communities already used boats to move goods. Tools, pottery, and even cattle were transported by sea. This wasn't a static society. Anthony Clark himself points to that network. He describes a Britain where communities were connected, trading, coordinating, and sharing resources across long distances. If that's true, the altar stone becomes more than cargo. It becomes a symbol, something important enough to justify years of effort. The study puts it bluntly. Moving a stone this far implies advanced planning and a high level of social organization. You don't do this on a whim. You need labor, leadership, timing, and cooperation. Still, the question hangs in the air. Even with boats, even with planning, would you really choose to move a stone this far unless it meant something extraordinary? What would convince an entire society to say yes to that journey? But just when the human haul theory starts to feel overwhelming, another explanation steps in. Colder, slower, and far older than any Neolithic journey. Glacial erratics. These are rocks ripped from their original bedrock by moving ice sheets, carried sometimes hundreds of miles, then dropped when the ice melts. No ropes, no boats, no human hands required. Britain has been shaped by ice again and again over the last 500,000 years. Vast ice sheets advanced, retreated, and advanced again, scraping landscapes clean and redistributing stone across the island. This matters because Stonehenge sits on ground that has been touched by multiple glacial events. One of the most extreme was the Anglian glaciation, roughly 478,000 to 424,000 years ago. During this period, ice reached farther south than at any other known time. Some reconstructions suggest it pushed deep into southern England, potentially as far as the area around Stonehenge itself. If that's true, a stone from northeast Scotland could have been deposited naturally, long before humans ever arrived on the scene. Then there's the much later late Devensian glaciation, peaking around 22,000 years ago. Ice flow models from this period show glaciers moving southward from parts of Scotland across what is now the North Sea Basin into northern and eastern England. That movement matters because glacial erratics from Scotland have already been found far from home, in central England, in the east near Colchester, and even as far southwest as Devon. Some models suggest the ice could have carried material at least as far as the Wash, on England's east coast. From there, the remaining distance to Stonehenge drops to around 150 miles. Suddenly, the impossible journey doesn't look quite so extreme. That's the appeal of the glacial theory. It doesn't deny human involvement altogether. People may still have moved the stone into position, but it dramatically reduces the distance they'd need to haul it. Instead of dragging a 6-ton block across the length of Britain, Neolithic builders may have only shifted it locally, unaware that ice had already done the hardest part hundreds of thousands of years earlier. And in a landscape as geologically chaotic as Britain's, that possibility can't be dismissed lightly. And this is where the debate really heats up, not between amateurs, but between professionals looking at the same ice and seeing different stories. Ice flow models don't agree, and that disagreement sits right at the heart of the altar stone argument. A 2020 study mapping glacial erratics in northeastern England showed ice moving southward from Scotland during the late Devensian glaciation. According to that model, material from areas close to the Orcadian Basin could have been carried across the North Sea Basin and into northern England. That path makes long-distance glacial transport at least plausible. But a different model, published in 2022 and cited by the Nature Study, shows something else entirely. Glaciers in northeast Scotland moving northward, not south. If that model is right, then ice wouldn't have helped at all. It would have dragged material away from England, not toward it. Same region, same time period. Completely different conclusions. The problem is the ground itself. Britain's sedimentary record is a mess. Repeated glaciations have scraped away, buried, or overwritten earlier deposits. Especially when it comes to the Anglian glaciation, much of the physical evidence has been erased by later ice advances. What's left is fragmentary, patchy, and often open to interpretation. That leads to the most frustrating issue of all: absence of evidence. Not evidence of absence, just missing pages in Earth's history. Scientists know the Anglian glaciation was massive, but beyond certain regions, its true extent and ice flow direction remain unestablished. And that's why absolute certainty is impossible. Ice movement depends on countless variables: climate, topography, pressure, meltwater, and time. Change one input, and the model shifts. So when researchers claim something is geologically impossible, others push back, pointing out how incomplete the record really is. In the end, this isn't bad science. It's honest science. Acknowledging uncertainty isn't a weakness. It's admitting that the Earth doesn't always leave us clean answers, especially when those answers are buried under 500,000 years of ice. And not everyone is willing to entertain the glacial idea. Not even for a second. Some archaeologists have pushed back hard, calling the glacial transport of the altar stone geologically impossible. No hesitation, no soft language. Just a full stop. Mike Pitts, one of the most vocal critics, took to social media to shut the idea down. His argument wasn't just geological, it was philosophical. He questioned why anyone would be so reluctant to credit Neolithic people with imagination, skill, and ambition. To him, dismissing human transport felt like dismissing human capability. But here's where things get messy. The debate starts to slide from evidence into emotion. Instead of asking what the data can and can't prove, the conversation turns into a moral standoff, as if questioning one theory automatically insults ancient intelligence. The media didn't help. Headlines flattened nuance into certainty. Scientists say it couldn't be glaciers. Experts confirm humans moved it. Complex probabilities got boiled down into click-friendly absolutes. And that's dangerous territory. Science doesn't work in absolutes, especially when the sedimentary record is incomplete. Declaring something impossible without fully laying out the geological reasoning only fuels skepticism on the other side. This isn't about denying human achievement. It's about demanding the same level of proof for every claim, whether it celebrates ancient brilliance or challenges it. The author of the transcript approaches this debate with one foot firmly in geology. With a background in the field, he doesn't dismiss human involvement, but he does question the idea of dragging a 6-ton block 500 miles across prehistoric Britain. That skepticism isn't rooted in disbelief of Neolithic skill. Quite the opposite. The author openly praises their intelligence and the monuments they left behind: Stonehenge, the Ring of Brodgar, and henges across Britain. These weren't simple people fumbling in the dark, but he sees them as practical. And that's the key difference. There's a fine line between respecting ancient capability and romanticizing it. Moving a stone a mile? Reasonable. 10 miles? Possible. Hundreds of miles through forests and bogs without wheels? That starts to feel like wishful thinking. From his perspective, the Anglian glaciation is the missing piece that hasn't been explored deeply enough. He points out that much of the evidence from that period is gone, overwritten by later ice advances. Yet bold claims are still being made without fully addressing that gap. What he's asking for isn't dismissal, it's transparency. More detailed ice flow data, clear citations, an explanation of why glacial transport is impossible, not just a declaration that it is. Questioning a hypothesis doesn't equal disrespect. In science, it's how progress happens. So where does that leave us? Here's what science can say with confidence. The altar stone did not come from southern Britain. Its mineral fingerprint clearly ties it to the Orcadian Basin in northeast Scotland. That much is solid. What science cannot yet prove is the exact path the stone took to reach Stonehenge, or how much of that journey involved human hands versus natural forces. The transport distance remains uncertain. It could have been hundreds of miles by people, far less if glaciers did part of the work, or some combination of both. The geological record simply doesn't preserve enough detail to lock that answer in place. And that's why this mystery may never be fully solved. It sits at the intersection of archaeology, geology, climatology, and anthropology. No single discipline holds all the answers. Only by combining them do we even get close. And even then, some gaps may never be filled. Even without a final answer, this discovery changes the story of prehistoric Britain. It suggests a level of connectivity that goes far beyond isolated communities building local monuments. Whether by trade, migration, or shared belief systems, people across Britain may have been far more linked than once assumed. If the altar stone was moved deliberately, it hints at symbolism powerful enough to justify extraordinary effort. If glaciers played a role, it would reshape how we think about sacred landscapes and how ancient people interacted with stones already placed by nature. Either way, Stonehenge stops being a static monument and starts looking like a living project, shaped over centuries by changing ideas and circumstances. There's also something humbling in the timescale. Human lives are measured in decades. Stonehenge is measured in millennia. The minerals inside the altar stone stretch back hundreds of millions, even billions of years. That contrast forces perspective. Most importantly, this finding doesn't close the book. It opens new chapters, new questions, new arguments, and that's exactly why Stonehenge still matters, because it refuses to be finished. The altar stone's true journey may never be fully known, balanced between ice, ocean, and human ambition. Whether dragged by people, floated by boats, or nudged south by ancient glaciers, it reminds us that Stonehenge still guards its secrets, and maybe that mystery is the point itself.